He pulled over a 73-year-old black woman on a quiet road in Georgia, spoke down to her, and didn't even bother checking her ID until she calmly showed him her Supreme Court credentials, and his face changed. Gloria Hemmings had never been comfortable driving at night, not since Marvin passed. Her eyesight wasn't as sharp anymore, and her reflexes weren't what they used to be. She wasn't in denial about it, but this road between Gray and Macon was familiar to her. Quiet and lined with fields and pine trees, just wide enough for 2 cars to pass. She'd been taking this route home from her sister-in-law's place for years. That Sunday evening, the sky was a deep shade of blue, the last bit of sunlight fading behind the trees. Her old satin-colored sedan moved along smoothly, though it felt a bit worn out, just like her. The air conditioning barely worked, so she cracked the window and let the cool air in. In the passenger seat sat a Tupperware container of leftover peach cobbler and a foil wrap plate. Bernice, her sister-in-law, always made sure Gloria left with something to eat. "You're getting too skinny," Bernice had said, gently nudging her arm. Gloria had smiled, though she hadn't felt much like eating lately. Halfway through the drive, as she passed an empty church with a tilted sign out front, she noticed headlights behind her, bright and too close. She glanced at her mirror. It was a sheriff's SUV. No markings, but there was no mistaking what it was. No sirens, just trailing her. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened. She tapped the brakes. Maybe she was speeding, but she wasn't. 5 seconds later, the blue lights flashed. She pulled over without a second thought, easing the car onto the gravel shoulder. The tires crunched over dry weeds as her signal clicked off, and she shifted into park. Her heartbeat was steady, but her chest felt heavy. She reached down for her purse and placed it on her lap, then returned her hands to the wheel, just as she taught her grandson. "When they pull you over," she told him, "don't argue, don't move too fast. Keep your hands where they can see them. Be polite. Make them feel safe, even if you don't feel safe yourself." And now here she was. The officer didn't come up right away. He sat in his car for nearly a minute, doors shut, lights flashing. Gloria watched his outline through her rear-view mirror. Finally, he stepped out, tall, maybe late 30s or early 40s, white, with a buzz cut. The kind of man who only smiled when he had to. She rolled the window down halfway as he walked up slowly, left hand hovering near his belt. "License and registration," he said before he even got to her window. No greeting. No reason. Gloria answered softly, her voice steady. "May I ask why I was stopped, officer?" "You swerved back there." "Been drinking tonight, ma'am?" he asked, leaning slightly toward her. "No, sir," she replied. "I haven't had a drink in over 20 years. He raised an eyebrow. "You got any weapons or drugs in the car?" No. He didn't ask for her ID again. He just stared. "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle," he said flatly. She didn't move. "Am I being detained?" "Don't play games with me," he snapped, louder this time. "Out of the car." Gloria took a slow breath. "Officer, I have identification. I'd like to show it to you." He rolled his eyes. "Later. Step out." Her hand started to move toward her purse. "Ma'am, don't reach." His hand went to his gun. She froze. "I'm not reaching for anything. My ID is in my purse. May I show it to you?" There was a pause. His chest rose and fell. "Keep your hands on the wheel," he barked. "You match a description." She didn't ask what description. She'd heard that line too many times before. Gloria stared straight ahead. Hands still, lips pressed tight. The wind picked up, brushing a few strands of silver hair across her cheek. She didn't move them. No cars passed. Not a single one since he turned on the lights. But this wasn't over. Not even close. Officer Brandon Kessler slowly walked around the car, like a man looking for trouble. Shoulders back, thumb a little too close to his holster, face unreadable, except for the tense line between his eyebrows. Gloria watched him in the side mirror. She didn't flinch. He returned to her window, leaned down again. "You from around here?" "Yes," she replied. "Born and raised in Georgia." "You got an address that matches his vehicle?" "Yes, sir. The registration is in the glove box, if you like." "Not yet." He cut her off, standing straight again. She heard the gravel shift under his boots. He looked into the back seat, at her purse, her cane lying across the floor mat, and 2 crossword puzzle books beside a folded cardigan. "Where you coming from tonight?" he asked again. "My sister-in-law's house in Gray." He tilted his head like he didn't believe her. "Late for a Sunday visit, don't you think?" "She made dinner," Gloria said softly. "We hadn't seen each other in a while." "You sure you weren't somewhere else first?" "I'm sure." "You swerved. Crossed a white line back there." She didn't argue. She knew he wasn't interested in her answer, just a story he could shape. Her eyes stayed forward. "Pop the trunk," he ordered. She blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said pop the trunk." "Officer, do you have probable cause for search?" His jaw tightened. That phrase, probable cause, seemed to land differently. Something in the way he stood shifted. Not quite backing off, but clearly uneasy now. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked back to his vehicle. Gloria let out a long, slow breath. Her fingers tightened slightly around the steering wheel. She had faced more pressure in one day as a judge than most people did in a lifetime, but this felt different. She glanced to her right. Still no cars. Just thick trees, fading light in silence. Kessler came back, this time with a small flashlight. He shined it right into her eyes. She squinted and turned her head. "Don't move," he said. "Just checking your eyes." "I already told you. I haven't been drinking," she replied. He stepped back again and started walking around her car, his boots scraping against the gravel. He was waiting, watching, hoping she'd slip up, make a wrong move, say the wrong thing. Then he asked, "You driving with anyone tonight?" "No." "You ever been arrested, Mrs. Hemmings?" "No." "You sure about that?" Her lips pressed together. "I'm sure." The way he paused made it clear he didn't believe her, like he thought he was catching her in a lie. But Gloria stayed still, didn't bite. He tapped the flashlight lightly on her window's edge. "Tell you what," he said, "if you let me take a quick look inside the car, we can wrap this up fast." "I don't give permission for a search without cause," she said calmly. Kessler stared at her for a second, then let out a short laugh. "Well, well," he said dryly. "Looks like someone's been watching those court shows." Gloria didn't even blink. He leaned in a little. "You hiding something in there, ma'am?" "No." "You always this difficult?" "I'm following the law," she answered, voice calm and steady. Kessler stood up straighter, clearly irritated. "You know, most people just go along with it. Makes things easier." "Easier for who?" she asked softly. He didn't respond. He just stood there, fingers tapping on her car door, breathing out loud. His radio crackle was static, but he ignored it. Then, suddenly, he tried her door handle. It was locked. She didn't react. He raised an eyebrow. "So now you're locking me out?" "I never unlocked it," she said. He stepped back, blinking, as if trying to figure out what to do next. The plan he'd had in mind wasn't going the way he thought it would. But Gloria wasn't done. Not even close. Kessler turned and headed back to his cruiser. Gloria followed his movements in the mirror. His walk was quicker now, more tense, less in control. He looked rattled, but she knew that didn't mean she was safe. Sometimes, a rattled man was the most dangerous kind. He sat in his vehicle. She couldn't see what he was doing, but his headlights stayed beaming in her mirror, hot, sharp, blinding. She waited. When he came back out, he was holding something, a clipboard, but he didn't come over to hand her a ticket or ask for her papers. He stood near her car and started talking into his radio. She couldn't catch every word, but she heard parts. Possible evasion, refused search, backup requested. Her hand stiffened on the wheel. He was turning the story around. She hadn't yelled, hadn't moved suddenly, hadn't disobeyed a single lawful order. But now, in his version, she was a problem. She glanced at the dashboard. 9:16 p.m. Still no cars on the road. No headlights in sight. Finally, he returned to her window. "You're not cooperating," he said, sharply. "I haven't refused anything lawful," she replied. You didn't get out of the vehicle when I told you to. You haven't explained the reason for this stop. I don't have to explain everything, he snapped. This isn't a courtroom. As soon as he said it, he seemed to regret it. Gloria saw it, a flicker of something, maybe regret, but it disappeared fast. I need you to step out of the car, he repeated. She took a deep breath. Are you placing me under arrest? You're being detained for questioning. Under suspicion of what? He hesitated. That pause said more than all the words he'd spoken. Step out of the vehicle, he said again, dodging the question. Gloria looked at her purse, then back at him. May I take my bag with me? No sudden moves. I understand. She slowly reached across her lap, opened the flap, and took out her ID case. She tucked it into her coat pocket, then placed the purse back on the seat. Her movements were smooth, visible the whole time. Then she opened the door and stepped out. The night air felt heavier now. Kessler gestured toward the front of the car. Stand right there. Face the hood. She walked slowly. Her cane was still inside. Forgotten. She didn't always need it, but tonight it would have helped. Her knees ached, but she stood tall, back straight, hands folded in front of her. Kessler walked around her, like a kid circling a teacher, tried to catch a lie in her voice. She didn't flinch, didn't speak. He moved to the driver's side, looked into the open door, and opened the glove box without asking. Gloria turned her head sharply. That's an illegal search, she said calmly. I have cause. No, officer, you don't. He looked at her, and for the first time that night, something changed his face. Not fear, not shame, but doubt. He realized quietly that this was going differently than he had planned. He shut the glove box and came back to her. You got a problem with how I'm handling this? She met his eyes. Yes. He raised an eyebrow. Care to explain? No, she said, but I think you'll understand soon. Her voice wasn't proud or angry, just certain. It threw him off. He stepped closer, lowered his voice. Who exactly are you? Gloria reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her ID case. She handed it to him without a word. Kessler took it, looked down, then looked again. His face went blank. He stared at the federal badge, at the name beneath it. Gloria M. Hemmings, Associate Justice, Supreme Court of the United States. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He didn't need to say anything. The silence said it all. For a long moment, Officer Kessler just stood there, frozen, shoulders tight, eyes jumping between the ID and her face, as if he had to see it twice to believe it. You're on the Supreme Court? His voice was thinner now when he finally asked, Are you really? I am, Gloria replied. Her tone wasn't proud, wasn't angry. It didn't rise or fall for effect. It was steady, calm, unchanging, like the gavel she'd carried for most of her life. She didn't blink. Kessler cleared his throat and stepped back just slightly, trying to gather himself, searching for a way out, for something to say, an apology, a reason, anything to soften what had just happened. I didn't know who you were, he stammered, voice now edged with panic. Gloria tilted her head gently. Would it have mattered if you did? His mouth opened, then closed. No answer. She didn't press him. She didn't need to. He slowly handed the ID back, now fully aware of how heavy each small movement had become. She slipped it back into her coat pocket, smoothed the fabric. I'm sorry, he muttered, eyes not meeting hers. It was just a regular check. No, it wasn't, she said. Not harsh, not loud, just the truth. Kessler let out a breath, shifting his stance. His boots scraped the gravel again. Look, I've been working a double. Long day, lots of calls. You've had a long day, she repeated, flatly. Not a question. He fell silent. Around them, the night was still. The trees moved slightly in the breeze. Crickets chirped from somewhere beyond the ditch. And Officer Kessler stood blinking, unsure of what came next. You want to write me a ticket? Gloria asked. If I really swerved, you should. He shook his head quickly. No, that won't be necessary. Then I think we're finished here. She turned and took a step toward her car. Wait, please, he said, stepping forward. I didn't mean to cause harm. She turned back. That's exactly the problem, officer. You didn't mean anything, but what you did meant something. She didn't raise her voice, but every word hit with quiet weight. I wasn't scared tonight, but someone else might have been. A younger woman, a teenage girl, my grandson. And fear like that, it sticks. It can shape a life, even when you think you were just doing your job. Kessler swallowed hard. He looked at her and said nothing. You didn't see a judge, she continued. You saw someone you assumed wouldn't speak up, and you were wrong. He didn't answer. She didn't expect him to. I won't file a report, she added. Not because you deserve that grace, but because sometimes a lesson is stronger when no one else is watching. She opened her car door, but paused. One day, she said, not turning around. You'll remember this night. I hope it changes you. She got in, shut the door, buckled her seatbelt. Her hand rested on the gear shift for a moment. Then she pulled away. Slow, steady, her taillights faded into the distance, down that cracked, empty road. Kessler stood alone, arms hanging at his sides. No cars had passed the entire time. He turned back to his cruiser and got in, but didn't start it. He didn't radio it in. Didn't write it up. He just sat there, windows up, lights flashing across his face in red and blue. And for the first time all night, he wasn't thinking about his shift, or his uniform, or his authority. He was thinking about her words. But Gloria's story didn't end with her driving off. Not quite. She didn't tell anyone what happened that night. Not over breakfast the next morning. Not when her niece called to ask how the peach cobbler turned out. Not even during her Monday check-in with her law clerk. She simply carried on. Took her walk, read the paper, scribbled notes on a case brief. Outwardly, it was just another quiet week in central Georgia. But something lingered. It wasn't fear. Gloria had spent 22 years as a federal judge before her appointment to the Supreme Court. She knew how to keep her fears in check. What stayed with her was something older, heavier, disappointment. Not in him. She expected that. But in the fact that even now, with her age, her credentials, her years of service, this could still happen. So quickly, so easily. And if she had been someone else, less composed, more afraid, it might have ended very differently. That thought sat in her chest like a stone. On Wednesday, she received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Just a note inside, handwritten. I don't know how to make it right, but I heard you. I'm thinking about what you said. That was all. The writing was messy, the paper cheap, but she knew exactly who it came from. She folded the note and tucked it into the back of her Bible, not because she forgave him, not yet, but because she believed people could grow if they were willing to sit with their shame long enough to learn. She never wrote back. There was no need. On Thursday evening, her pastor called. He asked if she'd be willing to speak at the end of Sunday's service. Just a few words, a personal story. She paused, then said yes. That Sunday, Gloria wore her blue church dress and pinned her mother's brooch at the collar. She didn't bring notes, didn't tell her family she'd be speaking. She simply waited. And when Reverend Colbert motioned, she stepped up to the pulpit, slow and steady. The congregation was mostly elders, retired teachers, widows, farmers. A few young parents trying to keep their children still. People who knew her, but not all of her. When she reached the mic, she let the quiet settle. I want to share something that happened to me last week, she began. No anger, no theatrics, just her voice, calm and clear. I was driving home late. I got pulled over by a deputy. People shifted. A few leaned forward. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't swerving. I was just driving in my husband's old car, wearing the same coat. She paused. The officer didn't ask for my ID. He asked if I had drugs, asked where I was coming from, ordered me to get out. A ripple of gasps passed through the room. I stayed calm. I didn't raise my voice. And eventually, I showed her my identification. She didn't say what it was. She didn't need to. What mattered most that night, she said, wasn't the moment he saw my title. It was everything he assumed before he saw it. The room fell completely silent. "There's danger," Gloria said, "in how quickly we decide who someone is just by looking at them. And if we don't stop to ask why we do that, we'll end up treating people in ways that are more cruel than we realize." She looked out at the faces watching her, quiet, still waiting, and continued. "I wasn't afraid that night," Gloria said, "but a lot of people would have been. Young people. Our sons. Our granddaughters." A woman in the third row wiped a tear. "I'm not telling you this to make anyone angry," Gloria continued. "I'm telling you because someone here might find themselves in a moment where they have the choice to speak up to stay calm or to remember someone's worth before jumping conclusions." She stepped back from the microphone. The room didn't break into applause. Instead, they stood quietly out of respect, but her words didn't stay inside that church. They spread farther than she ever expected. The next week, Gloria Hemmings's name wasn't in any newspaper. No one posted a video online. The moment passed as quietly as it arrived. But the people in that church, they carried it with them, like something folded in a pocket. Light enough to carry, heavy enough to matter. After service, a few church members hugged her. No speeches, just longer embraces, hands held for a moment more, eyes filled with words they couldn't quite say. By Tuesday, folks in Warner Robins were repeating her words, in beauty salons, in classrooms, at gas stations, and behind diner counters. They didn't always say her name. They just called it what the judge said. And everyone knew. Stories, even quiet ones, have a way of finding their way around. That Thursday, in a small yellow house with a broken screen door, a teenage girl named Marley sat at the kitchen table, finishing homework. Her uncle, a part-time security guard at the courthouse, walked in and dropped his keys on the counter. "You hear what that old lady said at the Baptist church Sunday?" he asked, grabbing a soda. Marley looked up. "What lady?" He shrugged. "Don't know her name. Some judge. Cop pulled her over, didn't recognize her, treated her like trash. Then she showed her ID. Turns out she's on Supreme Court. Real deal." Marley's eyes went wide. "Wait, really?" "Yep. Lives right here." Marley didn't say anything else. She just stared at her notebook. Something about the story stuck. That same night, miles away, Officer Brandon Kessler sat on his couch in the dark. The TV flickered. His wife, Erica, was asleep upstairs. Their son's toy truck lay on the floor nearby. He hadn't told anyone the full story, not even his supervisor, not the name on the badge. He wasn't sure why. It wasn't fear. Not really. It was something deeper. Her words echoed in his mind. "This isn't about me. It's about your choices." He thought about them at random moments, during routine stops, during coffee breaks, when his son asked, "Daddy, are you a good guy?" That night, something pulled him into the garage. He opened a dusty box near his tool bench. Inside were papers from his training days, old evaluations, a printout of the oath he once took. He sat on the cold floor and read it line by line. Serve without prejudice. Protect without assumption. Words he once recited without thinking. He stayed there a long time. The next morning, he left early. Told Erica he had something to do. He drove through town, past familiar corners, the grocery store, the mechanics, and then he parked across from the church. He didn't go in, just sat in his car, staring at the building. He wasn't sure what he was hoping to find. Maybe a sign, maybe her, maybe proof that her words had meant something. He didn't find either. But when he looked to the side, a young man with a backpack walked by, headphones in, hoodie on, and Kessler's first thought, just for a second, was to wonder if the boy belonged. That was the crack. The small break that let the truth in. But lessons like this don't end when one person changes. They keep going when others carry them forward. 3 weeks later, Gloria Hemmings sat beneath a magnolia tree in her backyard. Reading a worn copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God. A glass of sweet tea rested beside her, sweating in the Georgia heat. The morning had been peaceful until the phone rang. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello? Mrs. Hemmings?" I mean, Justice Hemmings? A young voice asked. Yes, this is she. The girl sounded nervous. I hope it's okay that I'm calling. My name's Marley Jenkins. I go to Northside High. Gloria shifted in her chair. I see. My uncle told me what you said at the church, Marley said quickly, and I've been thinking about it ever since. I even wrote something for class. My teacher asked me to read it at the county assembly next month. I just wanted to say thank you for saying what you did. Gloria smiled. You're welcome, Marley. I'm glad it meant something. It did, the girl said. I don't think I'll ever forget it. They talked a little more about books, college plans, and being brave even when you feel small. After they hung up, Gloria sat still for a long time, finger tucked inside the pages of her book. That afternoon, she wrote Marley a letter by hand and mailed it herself. That same weekend, in a quiet diner on the edge of town, two off-duty deputies sipped coffee. You hear about Kessler? One asked. Guy's like a ghost lately. Hardly says a word. The other raised an eyebrow. He get in trouble? Nope. That's the thing. No complaint. No write-up. But something changed, like he saw something that shook him. They sat in silence. Across from them, a waitress named Rhonda paused with her notepad in hand. She wasn't really writing. She was listening. She'd been at church that Sunday. She'd told her sister, who told her cousin, who told a friend who worked in a law firm in Macon. Every version of the story shifted a little. Some added drama. Some softened it. But the heart of it stayed the same. A woman stood tall, calm, unshaken, and reminded a man that a badge doesn't excuse blindness. And she did it without shouting. Weeks passed. Then months. Gloria never told the story again. She didn't have to. People passed it along like a folded note. Quietly, carefully, hand to hand. No headlines. No spotlight. And maybe she thought that's how real change happens. Not with noise, but with stories told the right way. Shared quietly. Landing exactly where they need to. She never spoke his name. She never would. Because this story wasn't about revenge, or shame, or getting even. It was about memory. About what happens when someone with power chooses not to crush, but to reflect. And what happens when someone wearing a badge finally chooses to look in the mirror. Much later, a young recruit at the academy asked Officer Kessler what the most important lesson of his career had been. He looked down at the floor for a long moment. Then he said, listen to the people who speak softly. They're the ones worth hearing. Because sometimes the loudest wake-up call doesn't come with sirens. It comes from the voice you tried to ignore,